All right, let's go ahead and hold this up and mute that because that's the thing. I'm on the internet. It's actually working. So, all right, let's mute this because I don't need that going. All right. So I was totally going to have music going, but it's not one to work properly because nothing wants to work properly tonight. So we're just going to make things work. Like, I got on at 8:40ish, 8:45, and started going in and trying to get things set up. And I was going to make posts in a few different places as soon as I did the starting now screen or starting soon screen, as the case may be. And yeah, no, I started fighting with the internet, and nothing wanted to work. Multiple attempts, nothing wanted to work. So yeah, this might be a thing. I am going to make a couple of posts, letting people know that I'm actually still doing the thing. Might do a shorter stream tonight because reasons. But if you're here, feel free, jump in the chat. You should, Celeste, if you're watching, you should have an option to actually type in a message and it'll show up in the stream. That'll be a good way to kind of interact. Because I won't be able to keep up with like Facebook Messenger and things like that. So, but yeah, I see you. I see you. You are on the internet as well. Welcome. So bear with me. I'm gonna make a couple of posts letting people know, yes, this is a thing. You said I won't repeat what you told me in the chat, but it sounds like you're having a good night, so that's a good thing. All right, let's go to my streaming group here and make a post, and hopefully we can do some things. So, how have things been while I'm doing this? We're going to have some conversation. I'll get to reading here in a few, but I'm going to wait until we get a few more people in, hopefully, and kind of go from there. I'm going to post in the Discord and everything. What's interesting is I'm streaming from this computer, but I've got the webcam over here with this computer. So I've got like a dual camera / dual screen set up that kind of messes with me sometimes. All right, so that's there. I'm live finally. Let's go in and we'll say hi to all the people. All right. But yes, we are going to do some reading of Teddy this evening. It makes me kind of sad that my music is not working the way that it should be. There was some sound coming through a minute ago on the starting soon screen, but it sounded seriously distorted. Let's see if anything pops up now. And this is sort of a trial by fire situation, so bear with me. All right. This guy should be doing the thing over here. Windows capture. Something's gonna pop up. There we go. All right. I'm really hoping that that doesn't sound horrible. Celeste, do me a favor, because iTunes should be playing some instrumental music right now. If it sounds horrible, please tell me and I will silence it, because I can't tell. Because I'm hearing it properly, but I went to go check the stream a minute ago while it was still on the starting soon screen, and it was completely like weird, like taps and things like that. So anyone who's here, if the music is bad, tell me immediately and I will shut it off. I sound echo-ish. How about now? Do I still sound echo-ish? Trying to... Okay, so for whatever reason, the iTunes thing is just messing with it. So what I might probably do is just do away with the music on the stream, but it'll help me mentally if I have music going, because otherwise I'm just sitting here in silence reading. So that's going to be a thing. So I'm going to hide these guys up here, because there's no point in telling y'all what I'm listening to or what we're listening to if it's not on. So there we go. Things have disappeared because magic. All right. I'm kind of jumping all over the place. All right. I don't have it. You know what? I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to run with it. I figure I posted in a few places earlier today. We'll just run with it and see who shows up. So, all right. So, I'm going to be reading Teddy tonight, which it's weird because on the camera it flips things, but I've got the book cover on the actual stream itself too, so that's a thing. There will be links to be able to go find it for anyone who is popping in and doesn't have it, so it'll be easy to do. So, Celeste, this will be the first time you've heard any of the novel stuff, right? Nice. Okay, so we'll just get into it then and kind of see how this goes. Obviously, I know how the book goes, but you know, as far as like people coming around and hanging out and things like that, I'll interrupt every so often as well, and you know, have asides or smart ass comments, or you know, comment on the writing and things like that. So this will be a little bit more interactive than a standard reading. So, but Bandit, what are you doing? My dog is laying in the floor in the middle of dirty clothes that need to be washed, and he's just like spreading his legs all over the place doing random things, and now he's just walking off to his bed across the room and just digging at it and just doing things because he's a dog. So all right, bear with me. Oh yeah, he's a mess, but you know, he's doing the thing for sure. Do not be surprised if you hear loud barking at any point in the evening, because all it takes is like the smallest little thing and he'll go off. So You know what? I lied. I'm going to make a couple of posts. I just won't do it on my main site that I go to. I'm all over the place. I'm a little frazzled from the whole internet thing. I was going to be a lot better put together tonight, and I'm definitely not. So, let's see here. Oh, stream loots. That's a thing. That makes more sense for when I'm actually playing Dead by Daylight on stream. All right, let's do that. Let's make a couple of more live promotion things. All right. Let's do it. So I can read what you're saying, but I won't actually hear you. You can't actually talk to me verbally. The only way that we would be able to talk is if you joined my Discord, which is a separate app, and I invited you in, and then you would be on the stream with me. And I'm not sure if you want to do that. I do that with friends when I play things like Dead by Daylight and stream it. That way, everyone can be heard on the stream while we're playing together. It makes for some interesting shenanigans as a result. No, you're good. You're good. Luckily, it's a one-way street as far as audio, unless I pull you into the stream. And you can't do that through the Twitch app. It's totally through other things. So, no, the only thing that you're doing is you just type and you put a message in, and that's it. Now, there are some things that I could do, like that would read your, messages to me and then show up on, but no, I don't turn that sort of thing on because it just interrupts me anyway. So, even on regular streams. So we don't want to have that on during a reading stream by any means. So, but I made a few posts. So I'm going to make one last one on my Facebook saying that, hey, I'm on. All right, so all right, shared it on Facebook. Let's do the thing. So this is Teddy, the first book of the Damnation Saga, and it's also the first Teddy Dormer book. Now, to give you an idea, the Damnation Saga currently incorporates 5 stories. And those are Teddy, which is the first book, Wake, which is the second Teddy novel. Then there are 2 stories. There's Desynchrony, which is a Sullivan Doyle story, which he's a character who shows up in the Teddy books. There's Flux, which is another short Teddy story. And then my third novel, In the House of Wolves, is a standalone book, but it's still part of the saga. And I'm working on a fiction book right now that has stories that'll connect in. And I'm also working on the Damnation Dirge trilogy, which will end the entire saga. So I've been a little busy. So anyway, this is Teddy. First, my name is Teddy Dormer. While I may upon first glance appear to be any ordinary 20-year-old male, do not judge this book by its cover. I assure you that I am anything but. What follows... Lauren! Whoa, holy shit. We just went from 2 viewers to 7. That was fast. I literally read 2 lines, and then all of a sudden everyone's here. How is it going, Lauren? It's all it took. All it took was me just like finally reading, and then everyone was here. Welcome everyone. Thanks for stopping by. We were literally just starting Teddy. There's I was talking to Celeste, who is here as well, and this is definitely her first exposure to my novels. Lauren, I get that. I've kind of been feeling kind of down today too, as far as like physically down. Christy and I originally had plans today, and we totally stayed home, and just chilled. And yeah, here we are. We're on the internet. So, all right. So let's get started since we're all here. Allergies do suck. They're one of the things that are definitely messing with me for sure today. So, but this is Teddy, the first book in the Damnation Saga. I'm going to start off. I'll just start at the beginning again since I got kind of sidetracked. I only read like 2 sentences. First, my name is Teddy Dormer. While I may upon first glance appear to be any ordinary 20-year-old male, do not judge this book by its cover. I assure you that I am anything but. What follows is merely a memoir, a way to exorcise the demons that haunt me from my journeys. I do not jest, nor do I write mere fantasy. As bizarre as my story may be, it is entirely true. Although I wish it was nothing more than a story to be told around campfires under the glow of a full moon. I do not seek fame, riches, or a late-night television talk show. I do not wish to be put upon a pedestal and lavished with copious appraisal and adoration. I prefer a life of anonymity. That word always fucks me up. This is not part of the book right now. In fact, I seriously doubt this memoir will ever see the light of day. If it does ever reach bookshelves, it will no doubt be labeled a work of fiction. If you are reading this volume, however, you may consider this as a realistic possibility. I am probably already dead, and this is a posthumous publication. Posthumous, whatever. Moving on. That's the intro. Chapter 1. A. Let's set the scene. Houston. I'm just passing through, but I have no particular destination. That's something you tend to grow accustomed to when you lead a nomadic lifestyle. I spend a lot of time behind the wheel, traversing endless miles as I travel from one obscure town to another major city. I won't remain in one place for too long. Horrible things have a way of happening whenever I stay put for an extended period of time. I hate to sound melodramatic, but I am a magnet for tragedy, even if it is not my own. I hate reading stories in which the tale is incredibly bleak and very little hope is to be found. Therefore, I will try to avoid writing an overly dark manuscript. Despite the sinister occurrences and shadowy characters I have encountered, I will do my best not to succumb to the trite literary mechanics of despair and dismay. After all, as I write this, I am very much alive. Therefore, there must be a ray of sunlit hope shining through the looming thunderclouds. I had never been to Houston before. During my travels, I always tend to drive a different route. I like to space out my visits to major cities. Instead, I frequent small towns and only treat myself to the sights and sounds of larger locales after several weeks of backwoods towns. Small towns have their charms, but it's rare that they have the bravado and the awesome power to shock and awe individuals like many metropolitan areas do. If you're reading this, you may disagree. Let's agree to disagree, shall we? It is a late summer day. Sweat glistens on my brow as I follow the sidewalk, minding my own business. Autumn will be arriving shortly, bringing with it chilling temperatures. The colors of leaves will transition through a wide array of dazzling colors, shifting from green to yellow, yellow to red, red to orange, and finally orange to a dull, lifeless brown. I clutch a voice recorder as I walk, speaking into the microphone as I focus my attention on the worn path laid before me. The words I speak are not important. Even now, as I write, I cannot recall what I said. Perhaps I should expect the hand to clamp over my mouth. Perhaps I should anticipate the arm slipping beneath my chin, tugging hard against my throat to restrain me. But I don't. I struggle, dropping the voice recorder. It strikes the asphalt, bust apart. Mechanical guts scatter across the ground as my assailant overpowers me. It seems ludicrous that this should be happening in broad daylight, where anyone could happen along and bear witness to this assault. But it is. How anyone can have the balls to attempt an abduction in public like this is beyond my comprehension. I am dragged into a nearby alley, the heels of my shoes scraping the concrete, and violently shoved into the trunk of a vehicle. The carpet is scruffy and coarse against my skin. I roll over to look up at my This is going to happen. I'm going to get tongue-tied. Often. Infrequently. This is why I don't read the audiobooks. Because the amount of times I would have to go back and just like edit things out and re-record. It's just crazy. Live streams are different because y'all just get to laugh at me and then we move on. I roll over to look up at my abductor. I yell and beg for him to let me go. I only get a glimpse of the man, blue eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, crew-cut blonde hair, a toned and muscular build, before he shuts me away in the darkness. Elsewhere, in Houston, I opened my eyes. My hotel room was dark save for the red digital display of the alarm clock. It was 3:15. If I had to guess, 12 to 15 hours had passed since the abduction. But not my abduction. I was still tired, but I willed myself to sit up. I threw out the sheet and swung my feet off the bed, placing them flat on the thinly carpeted floor. I sat there momentarily as I tried to regain my wits. I've often found myself in this position, awakening from a dream to find that action was required of me and time was of the essence. There are many times when I can sleep straight through the night without interruption, but there are plenty of nights like this when I find I am compelled to forego the nightly remedy for exhaustion and embark on missions of vital importance. Sleep is often a very disorienting experience for people, especially if they wake from the midst of a vivid dream. I imagine it is far worse for me, for my experiences in the realm of the Sandman are not my own, and therefore it takes time for me to disconnect from those experiences and reacquaint myself with reality. I dressed quickly, slipping into a pair of denim jeans and a Them Crooked Vultures t-shirt. I pulled on the pair of socks I had worn the day before that I had lazily discarded on the floor. I have a bad habit of never untying my shoes, so I simply inserted my feet into them, pulling on the back tab so I wouldn't break down the back support for each sneaker. Less than 3 minutes after I had awakened, I was out the door, which locked behind me automatically with an audible click. My passkey was in my pocket, otherwise I would have need to worry later when my current expedition was over. If I was an ordinary 20-year-old male, I would no doubt be carrying a Droid or an iPhone. However, that is not the case. How to tell this is slightly dated? I said Droid and not Android. That's what happens when the book was originally like being written 10 to 12 years ago. However, that is not the case. An expensive cellular phone with a monthly plan is not conducive to my lifestyle. More often than not, I find myself in circumstances that could very well lead to smashed electronics, and I'm quite certain even insurance plans would not cover the damage. When necessary, I pick up a prepaid phone, one so cheap that I do not needlessly worry as to whether or not I paid too much for a device that might later become electronic confetti. More often than not, however, I do without. Tonight, it would have been nice had I been equipped with a phone. I highly doubted I would have access to a phone to dial 911 when I found it prudent. Improvisation is always the name of the game. The walkway outside my hotel room overlooked the parking lot. It was void of human life at this hour. Beyond the lot was the freeway on-ramp. Farther on, the maze of high-rises began, each steel tower penetrating the formerly virgin skyline. A crisp night breeze ruffled my hair. My senses seemed heightened. I could feel this effort caress the individual hairs on my forearms and the nape of my neck. It was as though the adrenaline spike had led to an almost extrasensory awareness that had greatly enhanced my perception. I studied the city skyline, but I doubted the Can we just have a moment to laugh at me here? I can't even say a simple word. I'm getting tongue-tied. I noticed that before I jumped on, I was like, hey, I have a frog in my throat. This is probably going to lead to some unintentional hilarity. So, yeah, that's a thing. But I'm ready to hydrate, so that's a thing. I come prepared. Sort of. I gotta find my place again, sorry. I stayed the city skyline, but I doubted the adductee would be in that direction. I don't know why I can't say that word tonight. Sorry. To anyone who doesn't understand how this works, the entire notion of waking from a dream to find a stranger from that dream sounds insane, and I will admit it probably is. However, madness is something I deal with on a regular basis. And I had good reason to believe the adductee was nearby. I hurried to the nearest staircase and descended to the ground level. I considered taking my car, a 72 Ford Gran Torino, but I figured I would be able to keep a lower profile if I remained on foot. There was a breezeway that led from the parking lot to the other side of the building, over by the office, and I followed it. Sodium lamps kept the area brightly lit. If the adductee was being held in the same hotel building, I might have reason to worry about the establishment's superior lighting. Thank you, Celeste. I appreciate that. Even as I'm stumbling over my words. At least we get to talk while we do this, right? Alright. Continuing. Maybe. If I can find my place again. I was near the top of this page, though. If she was being held in the same hotel building, I might have reason to worry about the establishment's superior lighting. In cases of stealth, darkness is always preferred. I had a feeling, though, that despite the adductee's proximity, I was fairly certain that this individual was indeed a woman, was not being held captive in the hotel, but rather in a nearby building. A soda vending machine was at the other end of the breezeway. The clerk that checked me into my room earlier was retrieving his dispensed Pepsi. When he saw me, he asked, "Can't sleep?" I shrugged. "Bad dreams," I said. "Figured a little walk might help ease my mind." He smiled. "I completely understand. I know I never sleep well in strange places. Where was it you said you were from again?"
I ignored his question. I rarely speak about my origins, especially with strangers. Instead, I addressed his statement. I'm no stranger to strange places. I'm on the road a lot. Hotel rooms don't bother me. Must be something else. Ah, the clerk sighed. He popped the top on his soda can and gulped a bit of his drink. He then wiped some of the carbonated foam off his lips with the back of his free hand. Frayed nerves are a surefire recipe for a few restless nights. That's for damn sure. I smiled, appeasing him. They sure are. A silver Dodge Magnum pulled into the lot and parked 6 spots away, halfway between us and the office. Its windows were so darkly tinted that the vehicle's interior was nearly blacked out. The driver killed the engine and switched off the headlights before he stepped out. I recognized the man immediately. With his crew-cut blonde hair, glasses, and lean, muscular physique, the abductor from my dream was a hard man to forget.
Chapter 2. A. It is difficult to act indifferent towards someone when every fiber of your being wants to seize them, shake them, and force them to spill their wretched guts. Such circumstances had befallen me before, though, so my level of self-control is much higher than most people would possess in my situation. The best way to learn about someone is to pretend you do not care. If people believe they are being scrutinized, they raise their defenses. The abductor did not immediately walk into the office. Instead, he walked toward us. His gait and stride exuded confidence. Had I the ability to read one's aura, I'm sure it would have been aglow with power and pure, unadulterated corruption. But alas, I cannot see auras or commune with the lingering dead. I do not have a fraudulent psychic hotline. My name is not Miss Cleo. If you've ever seen Robin Williams' live on Broadway, he spoke of the creepy Louisiana psychics, the ones that speak in raspy, throaty voices and have old, cancer-stricken skin, tight scalps, and roomy yet alarmingly sharp eyes. He, of course, did not provide those wonderful details verbally, but he did act like such a gypsy. Those psychics don't tell you that your significant other only wants you for your money. No, they tell you that you're going to die a horrible, agonizing death, and as they make this horrible prophecy, they are probably conjuring the precise voodoo incantation that will deliver you to an early grave. You may want to mistake me for one of those croaking mystics, but I assure you I am only a humble nomad who can barely balance his checkbook, let alone remember recipes that require an eye of a newt or a wart of a toad. The abductor regarded me through wire-rimmed spectacles, his blue eyes methodically scanning my clothes and body language for any sign that something, anything, might be amiss. I would like to think that in the process of sizing him up myself, I was far more subtle. I pegged him as well into his early 30s. His demeanor suggested that he had military training or had seen enough television programs to effectively mimic the stereotypical soldier. The clerk didn't so much as nod in the abductor's direction as he did roll his eyes towards him. "Work awaits," he said. I nodded absently. I wanted to warn the clerk that the man with whom he was about to do business was trouble personified, a true agent of evil. This was the type of man that would shoot you between the eyes just for looking at him cross-eyed. Instead, I told the clerk to take it easy and turned away, walking back toward the far end of the building. There was another breezeway halfway between the one through which I had passed minutes before and the parking lot beyond this wing of the hotel, and I had every intention of walking to it as calmly as my nerves would allow before doubling back. Time was of the essence, of course. My window of opportunity would be short, but I know one thing for certain. I had to ascertain whether or not the abductor's victim was still in the trunk of the vehicle. As I walked, I realized something was not adding up. I cast a glance over my shoulder.
The clerk was leading his latest guest into the office, leaving the Dodge Magnum unattended. I doubted I would have enough time to slip through the next breezeway and circle back around to check out the vehicle before the men finished their business. I hesitated, turning back toward the car and beyond it, the office door. Paranoid habit has taught me to check sightlines whenever I enter a new establishment. I have found it is not only helpful but necessary to one's survival for one to know and understand his or her surroundings should extraordinary circumstances occur. Earlier, when checking in, I had cased the place, checking the office windows as well as the door itself, determining what view of the parking lot the clerk would have from the check-in desk. In my life, I have found the extraordinary happens with greater frequency than most people expect. I do not intentionally seek these harrowing adventures, mind you, but find myself drawn into them like a fly caught in the silky web of a spider. I did not let my paralysis get the best of me. I broke free of its wrought iron chains and quickly retraced my steps. I did not duck or move quickly or suspiciously as you often see characters in movies do. That, I find, is the fastest way to draw attention to yourself. It is far better to act natural and present yourself in such a fashion that others would believe you have every right to do what you are doing and to be where you are. Confidence sometimes is better than stealth. From sidewalk to blacktop, I crossed the parking lot and rounded the back of the abductor's vehicle, bending low only then so I would not be so easily spotted should the owner return sooner than I expected. I braced one hand against the ground, steadying myself, and leaned close to the trunk of the car. I had nearly put my ear to the taillight when I lifted my free hand, curled it into a loose fist, and rapped against the trunk lid. I was about to whisper, "Is anyone in there?" when the car alarm went off. "Hello, sir. How's it going, Jonathan?" "Busy with Sevy. Understand. Thank you for popping in, though. Appreciate you stopping by. We just wrapped the second chapter of Teddy. Fun part about Teddy is it has relatively short chapters, but a lot of chapters. I'm taking a moment to have a drink and then I'm going to keep going. Oh yes, definitely a good time. Celeste, Lauren, are you still with me? Lauren, it wouldn't surprise me if she got called by the circus once more. That's usually what she tells me whenever she pops out. Oh, okay, you're still here. No interruptions from the circus or anything like that? Oh, you did. Oh, nice. How's it going, Logan? Alright, so Teddy just set off the car alarm, trying to check to see if someone was in the trunk. Let's see what kind of shenanigans occur next. Chapter 3. Oh, I'm on a JBL speaker to all the puppies and kitties too. Fun times. I'm entertaining all the people tonight and the animals. Bandit's just over here like I'm used to him doing this sort of thing. Alright, Lauren, have a good night. If you want, this will be in the stream after the fact, and you can go back and listen to it and whatnot. So, have a good night. Thanks for stopping by. Alright. Chapter 3. A. Up until that moment, I had not realized the night's silence was so tenuously fragile. With the sudden activation of the car's security alarm, that silence shattered like glass, and my nerves were sliced and frayed by each of the jagged pieces left in the former quiet's wake. A numbing, pervading horror seeped into my mind. It spread its vile finger. Here we go again. Vile fingers over the lobes of my brain and threatened to take hold. If that happened, I would be paralyzed, unable to do anything but wait for the inevitable and immediate return of the abductor so that I may be subject to his wrath. That horror has threatened me on many occasions in the past, but on this night, like many others before it, I refused to let it drag me into a quickly escalating nightmare. Instead, I acted. I did not run. Keeping low, I hit the pavement and scrambled beneath the next vehicle. I wriggled as far beneath it as I could, sliding across the abrasive asphalt as far and fast as I dared, hoping the shadows would obscure me from prying eyes. Here, beneath a Mazda Protege, my sense of smell, my ears, they served me better than any other sense. Blah, blah. My limited point of view afforded me no more view than what a tiny chihuahua must see every day of its growth-stunted life. Elsewhere in the suddenly volatile night, a door slammed open. Hurried footsteps slapped the ground. No excited exclamations rose above the annoying car alarm. The man was not prone to useless words and carelessly spewed warnings. His diligent silence in itself was a threat, an omen of his own potential for unrestrained violence. Like a tiny chihuahua, my heart pounded furiously in my chest. Unlike a tiny chihuahua, I did not shake tremulously with spastic nerves or pee myself in terror. The alarm ceased. The abductor must have used a remote to deactivate it. The thud of footsteps carried heavy boots into my line of sight. The trunk sprung open as he approached the back of the car. The remote again. I tilted my head the tiniest bit, arcing my neck so I could track his progress. He said nothing when he reached the trunk. I heard no signs of a struggle coming from within as he surveyed it. I could tell by the way he rummaged through what I assumed were supplies that the compartment was mostly empty. "What are you doing?" came the voice of the clerk. I heard the distinct sound of a slide being racked. A bullet entered the chamber. I have been around enough firearms to know that sound for what it is. I've never fired a gun myself. I am pro Second Amendment, but the closest I have ever come to firing a weapon is disarming someone else. The very idea of taking a life, even in self-defense, has always been repugnant to me. I will do whatever it takes to defend myself and others, but I had never been pushed to the point where it was absolutely necessary I kill someone. Now that I knew a gun was involved, the game had changed. I knew its presence had been a possibility before, but I had not detected the presence of a pistol. Now that I had, my blood ran cold. I would have to be careful. I would be no help to this man's victim if I was dead. In this narrow space, in this narrow, nearly black space, I suddenly felt far more vulnerable than I had in ages. I had been careful in my previous adventures, always managing to stay one step ahead of my quarry, and had gone to great pains to avoid outright conflict. Then again, it had also been a while since I had gone head-to-head with a gun nut. Had I been Jack Bauer, I would have emerged and deftly disarmed the man, delivered a spinning roundhouse kick to his solar plexus, and then, while holding him to the ground with his own gun placed against his jugular, I would have interrogated him as to the whereabouts of his prisoner. But, alas, I was not Jack Bauer, and therefore I doubted I would be able to gain the upper hand on this adversary in such a fashion. I'm going to take a moment here and point out again that this is a dated reference, because I wrote this originally 10 to 12 years ago, and then Teddy was published a few years ago as well. I think 6 or 7 now. So, yeah, I would not use the Jack Bauer reference these days. But it's interesting because it does kind of give you an idea on when it was relevant or when it was originally written. So, all right, back to it. The clerk stepped into the parking lot as the abductor closed the trunk. Overhead, a sodium lamp illuminated this section of the lot. Therefore, I was able to make out the stark yet distinguishable silhouette of a large pistol in his shadowy hand. "John, get back inside," the abductor said. "I'll handle this." In that horrible moment, the pieces of the puzzle fell together, and I realized my mistake. When the militant abductor had first arrived, he had not walked directly to the office to arrange for a room. He could not have known that John was the clerk on duty unless he had known John before, for the clerk wore no uniform. Not a word had passed between them when John had looked at me and said that work awaited him. The other man could have simply stopped to ask for directions, but John had known his purpose here beforehand. And then there was the dream itself. Until now, I have not explained how my dreams work. I have a bizarre condition, one for which even doctors have no name. I cannot sleep unless there are people attempting to sleep around me. Whenever I am nearby and sleeping, sleep for others is virtually impossible. I have never been able to explain the scientific reasoning behind how it works, but I inadvertently receive the dreams, thoughts, and memories of others. It is for this reason that I lead my nomadic lifestyle. I cannot allow myself to subject this curse upon others for more than a day or two. I am sure I could find a nice isolated place to settle down, somewhere in the forest or the desert where there is no one around for miles, but in doing so I would doom myself as well, for without others around to sustain me, I cannot sleep. Sleep is vital to our health. We can go without sleep for only a short period of time, but days and weeks without healthy natural sleep will wear us down, decimate our immune system, leave us weak, unrested, weary. The foundation of our mental stability will begin to crumble, break down, disintegrate. We are each designed for sleep, and without it, we fall apart. In extreme cases, we perish. To my knowledge, lack of sleep has never been listed on a death certificate, but I can assure you that at the core of all the problems that may have been suffered, insomnia is sitting there, a shiny, maniacal, demonic skeleton pointing and laughing at its ill-fated victim. I say all this now for a reason, and this should have been my first hint. I was not seeing the situation for what it truly was. In order for my ability to work, I must be within a certain proximity to the other person. Around a lot of people, the most distressed, vivid, or psychically powerful dreams seem to push all others aside and smother them with their sheer ferocity. The other people remain unable to sleep, but I do not receive their dreams to the degree that I receive those of this particular individual, the Alpha Dreamer. Sometimes I can receive these psychic transmissions from as far as a mile away. That is rare, however. More likely than not, this Alpha Dreamer is much closer to me, usually within just a few hundred yards. So if there is ever a night you find yourself dead tired, but cannot sleep, wonder if I am within a football field's reach of where you are, and ask yourself if it's your dreams I'm dreaming. I doubted the abductor was sitting in the Magnum with his prisoner still locked in his trunk less than a mile away the whole time I was sleeping. That was the first clue I mistakenly overlooked, but should have realized right away. When he pulled into the parking lot, he had not arrived to rent a room. No, he was merely returning to his base of operations. I had received the dreams because his prisoner was already here, and John, the clerk, was his partner in crime. Chapter 4. A. As John returned to his small office, the anonymous abductor returned to the sidewalk and checked the other side of the Mazda. I dared not move, even though I was closer to the outside edge of the vehicle than I would have preferred. What I would have given to be Harry Potter at that moment, armed with a magic wand and an invisibility cloak so that I may avoid undue detection. But, as was the case with Jack Bauer, neither am I Harry Potter, and such magical means are beyond me. I waited, hoping the pool of shadows would obscure me well enough so that the armed villain would move on without detecting me, certain I would not have been as dumb as I actually was in this particular situation. I inwardly cursed myself for being so short-sighted. Normally, I was far better at gauging a situation, but in this instance, I had allowed myself to get painted into a corner, and now I was fervently praying I would not get riddled with bullets for my increasingly apparent ineptitude. I breathed as shallowly. In other words, I breathed as shallowly as possible, afraid the normal sound of air inhaling and exhaling through my nostrils would be loud enough to alert the abductor to my presence. My heart pounded in my ears, and, although illogical, I was certain the man possessed a superhuman auditory sense and would detect the frantic pumping of my heart as it circulated blood and fearful adrenaline through my arteries. The receding sound of faint footsteps sounded as he went in search of me. I wriggled out from beneath the vehicle, rising between the protege and the Magnum so as to keep out of the abductor's line of sight. Crouching, I advanced to the front of the Mazda and peered around its bumper. I caught a glimpse of the abductor as he slipped into the far breezeway. Once he was gone, I returned my attention to the office. The one thing I have learned is that prudent action in situations such as this is crucial. You cannot loiter and ponder. The more you think, the more time you give your adversary time to think. If you keep them on their toes, it will be far more likely they will make a mistake. It is always better to remain on the offensive and keep them on the defensive. Never let them act. Give them only the option to react. I had no idea what I would find in the office. John was in there, I knew, but I had no idea whether or not he was armed. I did know there was at least one adjacent room to the office chamber, and I surmised it was a possible location where they might be keeping their captive prisoner. If it had been me in their shoes, I would have used an actual room and left a do not disturb sign on the door. If anything were to go wrong, such as someone like me discovering something nefarious was afoot, I would not want my prisoner where she would be easily found. But that was me. Gauging from the abductor's vehicle, the Dodge Magnum, which itself reminded me of a dick on wheels, he struck me as the pompous, cocky sort. He was no doubt self-assured and confident in his own superiority. This was a man who did not believe he could lose. Pride and arrogance are powerful things, but they are also weaknesses I can exploit. John, however, was a different story. Whereas the abductor was the brawn, I saw John as the level-headed conspirator. He might even be the mastermind. Either way, I could anticipate how the abductor would act, but John, I was not so sure about. I was ready to walk into the lion's den with no idea where he was or what tricks he had up his sleeve, but something halted my step. I had an inkling of intuition then, like a squirrel nibbling at the back of my brain. One thing that has kept me alive thus far is my instinct, and whenever a seed of intuition blooms, I always take heed. There was something out here worthy of my attention. I turned back to the Magnum. The sleek body of the vehicle glistened beneath the sodium lamp. The nearly black windows were like the eyes of a dark soul staring back at me. Underneath the protege, I had not been able to keep an eye on what the abductor had been doing. In his haste, he had not secured the trunk lid. It remained ajar. Had I only glanced at it, I might not have noticed. I went to the trunk and raised the lid. The interior was clean and organized. An open firearm case sat off to the right. To the left, along the seam, a bit of the carpet had been pulled up, exposing the compartment, exposing the compartment underneath. There I could make out the edge of a spare tire. I pulled up the carpet, exposing more of the hidden compartment. This revealed the basic donut spare. One would think they would provide a full-size spare for a car of this caliber. A crankjack, and a hefty tire iron. I extracted the latter, replaced the carpet, and lowered the lid, leaving it ajar just as I had found it. I circled around the vehicles and approached the office along the building's outer wall, passing a couple of rooms in the process. Had I gone directly to the office door from the back of the abductor's vehicle, I would have been visible through the window. If this harebrained scheme of mine had any hope of succeeding, I needed the element of surprise. It was as I was within 5 feet of the door that it began to open. Now, the office was designed differently than any of the hotel's other rooms. Whereas all the other doors in the building are flush with the far flat outer wall, the office itself was a convex chamber, bulging like a tumor from its edifice. Instead of facing the west, like all the other doors on this side of the building, the office door faced south. The other windows faced... the office windows faced west, overlooking the parking lot. To my advantage, the office door featured no windows. Otherwise, the clerk would have already spotted me. The door swung inward instead of out, and I used this to my advantage. I broke into a run, barreling my shoulder into the wood, and drove the door inward. John cried out in surprise and staggered back. He tried to stay on his feet, but tripped over a chair seated in front of the window and went sprawling to the floor. I quickly shut and locked the door. As I turned back, John was scrambling to his feet. "Stay down!" I commanded, hefting the tire iron. But the clerk was obstinate and got to his feet, although he was still swaying as he rose. I swung the tire iron and grazed his temple. His skin broke, and a few droplets of blood sprang from the wound, splattering the cerulean curtain over the window as he dropped to the floor once again, this time crying out not in surprise, but pain. John raised one hand to his temple, felt the blood on his fingertips. He looked at me with confusion and feigned innocence. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I ignored his question, although the question I posed was answer enough. "Where is she?" John shook his head, blood running between his fingertips. He looked away from me when he said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." A lie. I squatted on my haunches before him. A drop of blood dripped from the end of the tire iron, spotting the thin beige carpet. "Tell me." I could tell then by the way his eyes narrowed, how his brow furrowed, that he had something in mind. He looked up at me then. "I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you looking for? What does she look like?" He was trying to throw me off my game. I could see that right away. The ruse wouldn't work. His attempt at subversion was weak, but sadly some people would have fallen for it. Intuition had led me to believe the Alpha Dreamer had been female, but now I thought back to the dream for just a moment, remembering my surroundings. I had not paid it much mind then because the victim had not considered it, but she had been wearing a bracelet, one her mother had given her for Christmas a couple years before. Then there had been a fleeting glimpse of her in a window reflection. She was young, but not especially young, either in her late 20s or early 30s. I smirked. She's thin with brown hair, blonde highlights. She was wearing a bracelet. Where is she? The color drained from John's face. Where is she? I repeated insistently, raising the tire iron. The threat of violence is often enough the only coercion needed during interrogation. Sorry, I need another drink. That frog in my throat does not want to go away. Thanks. I needed that thumbs up, John. All right. It's like, Mike, don't worry about it. Just drink your damn water. I'll have to eventually get a refill at this rate. Let me find where I was at again. Had I not hit him with the tire iron already, he might have suspected I wouldn't use it. He would be less likely. Yes. He would be less likely to doubt me now. Of course, the thought of using the tire iron while he was submissive did not appeal to me. I would derive absolutely no pleasure from bludgeoning him further. The thought repulsed me. John looked up at me now, his eyes full of fear and wonder. There were a million questions in them, but they were all irrelevant. I could almost guarantee none of the answers he sought would bring him any peace of mind or allow him to gain the upper hand. How did you find out? A little fairy came and whispered it in my ear, I remarked. Tell me where she is and this can all end. But John shook his head. No, it won't, he said. You can't stop us. People have tried and failed before. You're no different. Just then I heard something tapping on the window. When I turned to look, the abductor was standing outside, a massive desert eagle in his grasp, and pressed menacingly against the glass. Chapter 5. A. The man outside the window resembled a demon, possessed of all that was vile and despicable in the world. His grin chilled me to the core, and his eyes were filled with furied mania. This man thrived on unspeakable carnage and was thrilled by the hunt. I'm going to take a moment, because I know you're listening, Jonathan. I wrote this before Dead by Daylight was a thing, but I really find it interesting that I use the term thrilled by the hunt when there's a perk called Thrill of the Hunt and Dead by Daylight. I mean, it's appropriate. Anyway, in that moment, I knew for sure, although John was his partner, the abductor was the true threat. He was a creature of insatiable hunger, and that hunger could only be whetted with chaos. He thrived on the hunt, and that was what made him all the more dangerous. See, John said, a smile creeping into the tone of his voice. You're not getting out of here alive. I would not be disheartened by such words. Despite all the darkness I have encountered in my life, I am an eternal optimist. The one thing I have always possessed that has helped me get out of more close calls than I dare care to remember has been my ability to improvise. I struck John hard across the jaw with the tire iron. He didn't make a sound as he hit the floor. He had been dislocated from consciousness just as swiftly as his jaw had been from its normal position within his face. Then I ran. I half expected a gunshot to ring out to shatter glass, but it didn't, and I knew why. Gunfire would alert the other guests in the hotel. Someone would undoubtedly call 911. The authorities would arrive, and the fun would be spoiled. No, this man would only open fire as a last resort. This would only work to my advantage for as long as it took for him to gain an insurmountable advantage. As much as I liked not being shot at least then it would guarantee help would be on the way. As it was, for now, I was on my own. There was no sound of breaking glass behind me, but that did not surprise me either. A broken window would be far easier to spot than a door that had been busted in. Or unlocked. Shit. I had locked the door to prevent the abductor's entry, but I had not considered the possibility he might have a key of his own. I was getting sloppy. I glanced back over my shoulder and was not surprised he was no longer standing at the window. He had vanished from sight, but I assumed he was probably at the office door, even now, selecting the proper key to gain entry. I moved to the door I had noticed when I checked in. I doubted their prisoner would be kept in isolation there, but it was a possible route out of the office. The door was unlocked, so I let myself in and locked it behind me. I instantly regretted it. Instead of finding a path to freedom, I had found the lavatory instead, and the only way out was from whence I came. I'm going to take a minute and go get a refill. Then we can have a moment of discussion, and then I'll just keep going, and we'll keep this going for a little bit longer. I won't be able to get as much done tonight as I planned, just because I lost 45 minutes fighting with the internet, but we'll make it work. So hang out with me for just a couple minutes. I'm gonna go to a be right back screen so you're not just staring at, yeah, it was a pain. Like, for some reason, my computer was getting like less than 5 meg down, and I would do a speed test on my actual network, and I was getting like over 400. So I don't know what was causing it. I restarted my computer one last time. I was letting Celeste know that I probably wasn't going to be live tonight, and then it worked, and it wasn't dropping frames anymore because I tried going live twice before this, and it just wasn't doing it. So, but all right, I'm gonna go get some water. I'll be right back. All right, we'll be starting back up here momentarily. I'm waiting for Christy to run back to the bedroom because, I can't start up the camera until it's safe. All right. And just like that, we're back. I had to filter some water. And I talked to Christy for a minute. And then right as I was about to come back, she came right back out to take care of something. And it's like, okay, we'll give it another minute. Because who wears clothes? Like, when you're alone, other than me. All right, so Teddy's in the bathroom. John's probably unconscious from being hit with a tire iron, and the abductor is coming after him with a Desert Eagle. So, yeah, we're in some deep shit already. We're only 30 pages into this book. It's 350 pages. Jonathan's like, I remember this part. Celeste is here tonight, and she has not read my work yet. This is her first experience with it, so first 30 pages of Teddy, we're already deep in it. Yeah, it escalates fucking quickly for sure. This book goes pretty damn fast. The sequel, Wake, goes even faster, in my opinion. The Desert Eagle is pretty iconic in terms of this story. Yeah, like, it's definitely one of those moments of like, oh, he has that gun. That's okay. Oh yeah, yeah. If the killer got pulled into the fog of Dead by Daylight, yeah, that would make sense. But I feel like there are other characters in these books that would make more sense to enter the fog of that game. Celeste is like, no spoilers. He's not spoiling anything, I promise. What do you think so far, other than the fact that it's escalated quickly, Celeste? I'm kind of taking a minute to hydrate more. The notes, it was definitely one of those things where like I had the idea for the character probably about 2 years before I started writing the book, and I started writing this when I lived out in Seattle with Hank. And it was definitely one of those things where it's just like, this is way too good of a concept, but I have no idea what the story's going to be. So I started writing it while I was out there as part of National Novel Writing Month in the November, right as I was about to move back east. You're like, please, no one wants to see my brain. Teddy gets some, like, as you can tell, Teddy gets into some pretty crazy shit over dreams. So, like, it's fun because I like writing dreams. I think dreams are interesting to begin with, and having someone who can experience people's dreams and not know what he's about to encounter, it's a lot of fun to kind of play in that little sandbox for sure. And Jonathan's like tip of the iceberg. All right, let's get back to it because, you know, we're literally right here in the book. We have all this, and most of it's not going to get read tonight.
I'll come back to it that Saturday night. So I miss Hank too. I see him on PlayStation every so often, but like I haven't talked to him in so long. I touched base with him when I was still living in Tennessee about a script we had co-written like years ago to see if we could get it adapted elsewhere, and he was cool with it. And I think that was the last conversation we've actively had because he's not really active online. So, all right. Chapter 6 A. I shared the small room with a sink, mirror, and a toilet, which oddly enough featured a Finding Nemo lid, as well as the other usual restroom amenities. There wasn't a shower, which didn't surprise me since this was not an actual hotel room. There was no window either, so there was no hope of gaining anyone's attention through it, although even if there had been a window, I don't know whose attention I could possibly capture at 3:30 in the morning. I had the absurd thought I could bash my way through the wall using the iron. Perhaps I could break all the way through and escape into the adjacent hotel room. I squashed that idea almost immediately, though, knowing I wouldn't so much as break the tiles off the wall in here before my hunter broke into the room. And even if I did succeed in pummeling through to adjacent quarters, my stalker would undoubtedly already be on the other side waiting for me. My only hope, I knew, was to catch my would-be assailant off guard as he gained entry to the room. It was a weak plan, but it was the only option I had at this point. Once again, I had allowed myself to get painted into a corner, but now I had a weapon. Of course, my tire iron would prove useless against the Desert Eagle if I did not make my initial assault count. I forced myself to relax. If I was too tense, I would be more likely to botch the job when the abductor came for me. And in a situation like this, I could not afford to make a mistake. Desert Eagles tend to leave very large holes in people. I thought again of the man's magnum outside, then the Desert Eagle. Perhaps I had misjudged him a few minutes earlier. I had thought of him as the cocky sort, but I surmised I hadn't quite gotten a psychological profile right the first time. He wasn't convinced of his own superiority. He was compensating. This was all about power, to make him feel better about himself. In fact, he probably suffered from an inferiority complex. The car, the gun, the need to feel power over others. It was all in an effort to balance deep-rooted mental problems. He hadn't needed to tap on the window to announce his presence. He could have very easily unlocked the door and entered the office, giving me no time to flee or react. He would have easily possessed the upper hand. Instead, he had felt the need to instill fear in me. He wanted to see the look on my face when I realized I had been discovered, that I was now being hunted once again. I thought back to my time beneath the car. It was too convenient that he hadn't seen me. What if he had seen me? Had he wished to lure me out to make me think I had a chance at surviving this encounter? Had he intentionally left the trunk open so that I might find the tire iron to use as a weapon? I did not know how much of this he had considered for sure, but it felt right. He must have known I was hiding beneath the Mazda and continued on without confronting me. It was a game, and he wanted to play just a bit longer, toying with me as a cat would a mouse. He had played me. He had taken a chance that I wouldn't go directly for a phone and call the police. He knew I had no evidence to expose the sinister activity in which he and John were currently engaged. If anything, I could be implicated. I was the only one here who had initiated the violence. This man, this abhorrent monster, could easily paint me the villain in this psychotic debacle.
And would the police, if they ever arrived, actually discover their captive? I sensed the answer was no. The doorknob wriggled a fraction of an inch. The door was locked, of course, so he would not be able to just barge right in on me. Unless I wanted him to. I reached forward and, holding the tire iron at the ready, unlocked the door. Up until this point, I had probably acted just as he thought I would. Now it was time to change the game. By becoming unpredictable, perhaps I would be able to regain the upper hand. I would once again have the element of surprise. John obviously had not been privy to the abductor's game. That told me one thing about Mr. Crewcut. He thought John was dispensable. Even if I had killed John, he would not have cared. It would have simply added credence to the "I'm innocent" card he could play with the authorities after he killed me in self-defense. This man was a sociopath and cared not for the well-being of others. All this man cared about was the thrill of the hunt, that phrase again, and the power he gained from each dirty encounter. That was his weakness, and I would exploit it. The doorknob wriggled again, but this time it hesitated when the abductor realized it was turning farther than he expected it to. He had already turned it farther than it should have had it remained locked, and he knew it. Take the bait, I thought, willing him to turn the doorknob further and open the door. He did just that. He turned the knob the rest of the way and pushed the door open. I saw a flash of light reflect off the shiny barrel of his Desert Eagle as he entered, gun out in front and aimed downward. In his eagerness to enter and take me out, he had grown overzealous. Certain I still did not have the upper hand, he had exchanged prudence for recklessness. I swung the tire iron down, rapping it hard against his hand and the gun. I heard a crunch as I broke bone. The man screamed in surprise, staggering forward. His head was bent low as he came in, and I delivered another blow, this time to the base of his skull. He fell forward, lost his footing, and his face slammed against the sink. Blood exploded from his nose as cartilage shattered, and he slumped to the floor, unconscious. I relieved him of his weapon, removed the clip, and ejected the round from the chamber. I may prefer not to use firearms, but I am fully capable of operating one should the need arise. I left the abductor in the restroom. In the office once more, I hid the weapon in a desk drawer. I hid the magazine in another drawer. In my haste, I had overlooked the monitor on the desk. Its screen was black, void of power. I turned the LED on, and it brightened to life. The black and white image resolved to form the woman from my dream. Their captive. She had been stripped down to panties and a bra and was secured with chains and handcuffs to a bed. Even in the sparsely lit image, I could tell she had been beaten, but she was alive, sprawled across the rumpled sheets. I would have wondered how John got away with keeping an LED monitor of their victim in the office if not for the portrait on the wall. It was of the abductor, dressed in a suit and tie. According to the plaque beneath it, his name was Gerald Howe. He was the hotel manager. Chapter 7. A. I had every intention of calling the police, but first I had to locate the prisoner. You may be wondering why, but it's rather simple if you think about it. I prefer a life of anonymity. Therefore, I had every intention of vacating the premises long before the police arrived. I did not worry about the authorities tracking me down afterward. I had parked far enough away from the main building so even the security cameras would not have captured my license plate, and I would be sure these devices would be unable to catch even the slightest glimpse of it when I left. Have a good night, Celeste. If you want to catch the rest of this, it'll be on this page after the fact, and you can catch the rest of what I read tonight. I'll be picking up where I leave off next week. Have a good night. By the way, you're welcome for the nightmares. Have a good night. Stay well. Gotta remember where I was at. Hold on. I had parked far enough away from the main building so even the security cameras would not have captured my license plate, and I would be sure these devices would be unable to catch even the slightest glimpse of it when I left. The information logged at check-in was an alias. Frank Hutton was one of the many identities I utilized in little inns such as this, and he, just like all my pseudonyms, was not traceable back to me. I had paid the bill in cash, so there was no credit card linking me to the transaction. There were always undesired consequences of emerging from a situation as a hero or good Samaritan. You were expected to stick around and provide a statement, or even wait for the trial, to which you would be subpoenaed in order to provide a witness testimony. For me, that was unacceptable. I would be breaking my cardinal rule: stay on the move. Therefore, my sole purpose now was to locate the woman Gerald and John had kidnapped. Only then would I call the police. Not only would I then be clear of any blame of assault on the employees of this establishment, I would also be able to slip away just as anonymously as I had arrived. I do not yearn to be in the spotlight. I do not want my face plastered all over the primetime news. I do not want people to shake my hand whenever they see me on the street. Infamy ruins any chance I have at a life of anonymity. And for a man with my bizarre talents, a life in the shadows is the only answer. I checked the feed running to the monitor. In a compartment beneath the top drawer of the desk was a small security receiver. This compartment was normally meant to house a computer tower, but it had been used instead for the security feature since a notebook computer had been employed for bookkeeping procedures. A series of dark yet colored LED lights adorned the side of the switchboard device, and beside each light was a small strip of white masking tape. Written on each piece of tape was a number. Room numbers. They had a camera set up in every guest room. Jesus, I breathed. Only one of the lights was illuminated. I supposed all the feeds could be easily called up and the video recorded, but I deduced only one feed could be recorded at a time. Since their victim was in one of the rooms, I guess that was the only security feed they cared about at the moment. The light corresponding to their prisoner's room was 17. If I had known that, I would have gone directly to her room. Perhaps I should have deduced it, though. After all, I had been staying in room 18. She had been in the adjacent room, separated from me by only a thin wall. What appeared to be a Rolodex was on the desk, but the tabs on it were marked with low ascending numbers, up to 40. I assumed this was where they kept the key cards for the guest rooms, and I was not disappointed. I collected the room 17 key and departed the office. I was doing all this without gloves. My fingerprints were all over the scene of the crime, and I knew it. Lucky for me, I had never been fingerprinted. I proceeded upstairs to room 17, and all the while I wondered how they had secretly transported her up here. Perhaps they had drugged her and spirited her up to the room while business was slow. I didn't know and didn't care to know, but they were ballsy to put her on the top floor. I thought again of Gerald and realized that for a character like him, it was not so surprising. He probably saw it as a challenge to get her upstairs and locked away without arousing suspicion. Prick. In a horror movie, perhaps there would have been a third culprit awaiting me in the room, where Gerald would have regained consciousness and magically teleported into the room. He would be waiting for me on the other side of the door, his manic smile oozing with the blood from his obliterated nose. But this was not a horror movie. I opened the door and found no one waiting for me within. If it had been one of those ridiculous Saw movies, the door might have been rigged to a tripwire tied to the trigger of a shotgun hanging above my head. But there was no unexpected consequence to opening the door. Despite their insidious nature, the villains in this particular instance were not of the evil plotting mastermind sort. They had not taken steps to ensure a high, gory death count. The woman bound to the bed had been silenced by several circuits of duct tape twisted about her head. One of her captors had been thorough, knowing that a simple rectangular strip of duct tape might not be sufficient. I approached the bed and the woman squirmed. I held my hands up as I approached and, in the most soothing voice I could muster, said, "Don't worry. I'm here to help." I touched the duct tape gag and felt around for the end. When I finally located it, I told her, "This is probably going to hurt." Then proceeded to unwind it from her face and hair. She went several times as I unwound it, but I was finally able to remove all 3 layers of tape. She looked at me warily, tears leaking from her eyes. "Who are you?" she croaked. Her voice was dry and brittle from dehydration. "It doesn't matter," I told her as I checked her chains. They were each locked, and I did not have the keys for them. "Let me get you some water." I went into the bathroom. Paper cups had been supplied by the crooked management in each of the rooms, and I filled one of these with tap water from the faucet. I returned to the bedroom and gave the woman just enough to wet her parched lips, mouth, and throat. Then she asked me again what my name was. "Like I said, it doesn't matter," I assured her. "What matters is I'm about to call the police so they can come set you free. I would do it myself, but I don't know where the bastards hid the keys." She nodded slowly. "I understand." She looked into my eyes then. "I'm Amanda," she said. I forced a smile. "It's nice to meet you, Amanda." "Won't you tell me your name?" I shook my head. "My name doesn't matter. What does matter is that you'll be safe now." With that said, I turned away from her. There was a phone on the nightstand, and I plucked it from the receiver, dialing 911. All I got was a pre-recorded message saying that my call could not be completed at this time. It was only then that I saw the small plaque attached to the base of the phone. "All calls must be approved by the office." I swore, replacing the receiver on the base. I turned back to Amanda, but she did not look panicked. Despite the fact she had been kidnapped, beaten, and further tortured in unspeakable ways by sociopaths, she was the epitome of the word calm. "You can't call out, can you?" I shook my head. "All calls are routed through the office. Seeing as how I've rendered the staff unconscious, I doubt they'll be willing to patch me through to 911. Amanda sighed, closing her eyes. "I suppose not." I did notice when I pulled in tonight there's a payphone at the street corner. I'll run down there and place the call. I'd say the police should be here rather shortly. "Okay." I rose from the bed and started to exit. I was almost to the door when, behind me, Amanda said, "Thank you." I stopped in my tracks and looked at her from over my shoulder. "You're welcome," I replied, and stepped outside, and came face to face with John. So, we are after 11. I lost about 45 minutes of time this evening because of technical difficulties. But I'm thinking that we're going to stop here, just short of where I had initially intended. Just because, that's the thing. The water's helping to a degree, but that frog I've had in my throat all evening is just not wanting to go away, per se. But, Jonathan, I know you're there. Someone else is hanging out with us, and I'm not sure who. But thank you for being here. I am going to check and see if there's anyone to raid. So, hang out with me a second. I'm going to see if I can
get us over to somebody. I'm going to pull up the Twitch machine and see who we're going to drop in on. Jay is actually in the middle of playing Resident Evil Village right now. I think that would be entertaining. So Jay is a friend of mine from the Knoxville comedy scene. He plays a lot of Dead by Daylight, but he also loves Resident Evil. So of course he is making his way through Village right now. We're gonna go hang out with him. So let's make sure that we, you know, make our voices heard when we drop in. You know, wish him a good night and whatnot. I'm gonna set it up right now. We'll probably be doing this again on next Saturday night. As long as life allows, I'm going to try to do some more Dead by Daylight streams during the week as well. So, but thank you for hanging out with me tonight. We're going to start the raid here in just a minute. Until next time. You too.